Alright, so for today's restoration, I'm going to do Princess Leia. Everybody knows Princess Leia. She comes with two accessories. She comes with this little teeny tiny gun here. And she comes with a plastic cape. Now, this is a reproduction cape, and you can see it's like super flat. I've never seen one like this before, but we're going to use it. Because most of the time, I'm going to explain why these capes aren't always found. But the way you put the capes on is you have to turn their arms completely backwards. And then come straight back. Around, fold this down, and then swing your arms around and down. I think the original capes were a little thicker than this. But here's her cape on, and I'll show you the reason why they're not usually on these figures, and that's because when you do this, she can't sit down. And especially when I was a kid, I had the land speeder, and that was like basically the only vehicle you got back in those days when they had these vinyl cape figures, was the land speeder. If you try to fly in the land speeder, it doesn't work. So usually what you do is you just take the cape off, and then they can sit down in the land speeder. Now this cape might take a little finagling to get it to where it's going to work well. For the most part, that's going to be it. Now on this particular figure, I have a lot of paint wear on the hair, and I have a little bit on the fingertips. So we're just going to touch up her hair and do her fingertips. So I've mixed up a fresh batch of paint, and we're going to get started. So let's see. I'm going to use this particular brush right here, and I've pre-mixed her paint. I also want to show you her gun before we get started. Now there's a funny story about this gun. This gun is very tiny. As you can see, it looks huge on the camera, but this is a really small gun. And when I got this figure when I was a kid, I had this gun for exactly one day, and I took her outside. I started playing with her with all my other figures, and I was out on the front yard, and the gun fell out of her hand. This one's in there pretty good, but you can see when you're 6, the sucker will fall out of there pretty easy. And I spent probably 2 or 3 months looking for that gun, because you only got one gun, and for most figures, you know, guns were in scarce supply. So I looked for that gun and looked for that gun, and I never found it. But that was then, and I got this replacement. Let's see if I can get a little tighter in here. Alright, so we're going to get started on... I'm going to wet my brush just a little bit. And see how this paint is going to work out. I'm going to try to go with the hairline here. She's still got a little bit of dust in the cracks and crevices, but I'll just ignore that for now. I'm working back to front on her hair. This color matches pretty well. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. I'm going to have to get a little more fine-tuned when I get up to her face. I'm just going to rub that off a bit. There we go. I'm going to get her down here so I'm not trying to fight myself. Get a little more stability. Still got some more. I'm going to try to keep her up off the ground, but I want to use the stability of the table to steady my hands with. And then I take my pinky and I put it up against my other hand. That way I have another point of contact. That is, I know I've touched this part over, but it's going to take a little, there we go. Alright. That looks pretty good. I'm going to stick her like this to keep that wet paint up off the paper towel. I thought this color was similar to the Han Solo that I did earlier, but it was a little darker. I'm surprised. I thought they would like just use a generic brown hair color, but each one of these has had a different hair color. This is just regular skin tone. And I'm going to take it right out of the cap. Now her belt looks really good, so I'm not really going to mess with that, but there are two silver medallions on her belt. And the tips of her fingers just need a little touch up. So I'm going to get a little water. Get a little bit of flesh tone. Touch up those tips a little bit. It's pretty good. I'm going to take some of that off to get her finger detail a little nicer. I'm going to rub some of that off. I'm going to get the tip of her thumb. Inside of the hand doesn't look too bad. Oh, spoke too soon. Let me get in there. Get the outside of her hand. I'm going to try to blend it in a bit so it's not quite so obvious. Okay. Now I have Princess Leia and her weapon, and we're good to go.